let's be perfectly clear. We are in the midst of a global environmental crisis. There's absolutely no doubt about that. From the scientific evidence, we know that we are living in a climate emergency, that biodiversity is on the decline, and that toxic pollution is pervasive across the planet. So I don't want to come across as one of these yahoos who puts on rose-colored glasses and says everything's fine, don't worry about it. We should be worried. But my perspective is that we should also be inspired by the solutions that we have already implemented, by the progress that we've made. The successes in terms of acid rain and the protection of the stratospheric ozone layer are really good examples of how when we look at the science and we respond to the science with strong public policies, laws and regulations, both at the national level and at the international level, we can actually succeed in tackling these challenges. People are not willing, and frankly, in a world where we have 8 billion humans, we simply can't go back to a kind of hunter-gatherer existence. That's simply not a plausible solution, and I don't think there's very many people that would suggest that. So we are in a position because of our population growth where we do need to find technological solutions to some of these problems. We also need social solutions. So, the reality is that not everybody can live like a contemporary American lives, or a contemporary Canadian, or even for that matter, a contemporary German. We need to recalibrate our value systems to value living in harmony with nature and to value greater equality amongst people. But we also need these technological solutions to get us out of the pickle we're in. And I will say that I do have profound concerns about the developing megacities in the global south. And this comes back to a point that I mentioned at the outset, which is, if there's one thing that's gone backwards since I wrote The Optimistic Environmentalist, I would say it's the increasing inequality in today's world, both within countries and between countries. And so, for example, when I went to Nairobi in Kenya, I just had a really difficult time envisioning how that city could transform itself from its current environmentally catastrophic condition into something like a green city in the global north. And so without some fairly massive economic transformations, it's going to be tough times ahead for people living in those megalopolises in the global south. And because of population demographics, that's where the big super cities of the future will be.
You have just heard David Boyd, the UN Special Rapporteur on Human Rights and the Environment, outline some of the major challenges ahead in making sustainability and prosperity compatible in times of crisis: climate crisis, economic crisis, democratic crisis. It is clear that sustainability and prosperity are interlinked. We all understand what prosperity is, but what is sustainability? Sustainability is not a new concept. It was invented in the 18th century as sustained yield, as part of a long tradition in forestry in order not to run out of timber in times of scarce supply or high demand. The concept of sustainable development as we know it now arrived on the political agenda via the Club of Rome and its report on the limits to growth in 1972, just before the 1973 oil crisis. This report, drafted by MIT researchers, declared, "We are searching for a model output that represents a world system that is sustainable, without sudden and uncontrolled collapse, and capable of satisfying the basic material requirements of all of its people." In 1987, the report of the Brundtland World Commission on Environment and Development defined sustainable development as one that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. In other words, sustainable development is economic growth that is forceful and at the same time socially and environmentally sustainable. Half a century later, what are the economic and political drivers affecting sustainability and prosperity? Individuals can feel powerless to affect change. Politicians, economists, scientists tend to examine single items in the Problematik without understanding that the whole is more than the sum of its parts, that change in one element means change in the others. Electoral cycles reward short-termism. Waste stream, resource utilization, and degradation are not adequately accounted for in the costs and price of products and services. Profits from public goods or common resources are extracted by private companies, but the costs are borne by the public. The environmentally sustainable choice is often not economically rational for individuals or companies. We measure economic growth in GDP, which is not a good measure for prosperity nor sustainability. Sustainability and prosperity can coexist if we manage to address these drivers of incompatibility. Before we hear the opinion of our experts, which of these drivers do you feel would be the most impactful to address, and what opportunities do you see to do so?